morning, everybody. It's lovely to see you. I'm sorry we're not exactly on time, but I'm going to do my best to entertain you for the next 20 minutes or so and talk about the future of money, because we are actually going through something of a revolution, and I think we're in the very early stages. People don't really realize just how dramatic the changes are coming, but they are. They're going to be quite transformational. And the way I've chosen to think about this, and the way I'm starting to talk about this a lot, is this idea of streaming. So once upon a time, we bought music. You bought records or tapes or CDs and you played them at home. And then we went from buying music to downloading it. You downloaded a copy, or you stole a copy, and you download it and you use it on your device. But now we just stream music. When we want it, we stream it. And I think that is the model that we are headed towards in finance. Today, we used to keep cash, and then we put money in bank accounts, but we moved it relatively slowly. And eventually, we are literally just going to basically stream money when and how we need it. And it's going to happen as we consume products and services, not 30 days later or 60 days later, but at the moment that we consume them. Now, everybody is getting into the stablecoin business, and it does, to me, sometimes feel like this is getting a little ridiculous if you're keeping track of the number of companies that are jumping into the stablecoin business. But I would, at least to some degree, argue that this is actually a pretty good thing and is not entirely unreasonable. This is going to be an enormous market, and stablecoins are basically the future of bank deposits, in my view, right? The volumes are kind of really exploding, right? Now, it is difficult, to at least some degree, to really understand how much stablecoin volume is real, because a lot of it is just used for sort of market transactions where people are sort of creating prices, they're trading with themselves. I actually worked with a US university, and they found that there's at least one blockchain where more than 90% of the transactions are basically people transacting with themselves to create the impression of like market volume and price. Right? They're just basically running a large-scale pump-and-dump scheme. But even when you strip that out, or you try to strip it out, the answer is there's an enormous amount of it. Most of it's happening on Ethereum, but certainly not all of it, right? But it has become the dominant sort of crypto blockchain ecosystem. And we really think that we're just kind of getting started, because the volume of demand, we're just starting to tap the individual use cases. To start with, we are heading into a world, first of all, where there's going to be a lot more assets worth buying on chain. So today, there's a limited number of assets that you really want to buy on chain, right? We started with crypto assets. Now we have, US treasuries and a few other bits and pieces. Eventually, I think all new assets of significant value are going to be deployed on chain instead of on traditional exchanges. It's easier, it's faster, it's a lot better. There'll be more assets to buy, and when there are more assets to buy, you need stablecoins to buy them. Consumers are going to they are adopting stablecoins. It's happening in lots of emerging markets, but we will see it get adopted in mature markets as well, as big retailers and others look to drive down their transaction costs, right? Typical net margins in a US supermarket chain are 1% to 2%. And if you're paying 2.5% of credit card transaction fees, then knocking that down to, say, 0.25% by shifting people to stable coins, that's worth a lot of money. When you start to have tens of billions in volume, you're going to move that along. And there are lots of other business cases where we're going to see consumer adoption. And then lastly, we're really just getting started in the business ecosystem space, right? There are a lot of value propositions for companies to adopt stablecoins inside their own organizations. And I'll give you a good example inside of EY. We are a global firm. We operate in like 225 countries. We know that our internal global spending on bank fees is over $100 million a year. And we could reduce that dramatically, like to an enormous amount, if we were able to shift all of our transactions from traditional banking to on-chain structures that have vastly lower cost structure. Now, we can't, for lots of obvious reasons. It's not that simple. We can't just move everything from one to another. But what we do know is that we can start moving these transactions over time and create meaningful value and savings for ourselves, right? We're seeing this first with things like cross-border payments, but it's going to start to affect domestic payments, payroll, all kinds of activities. I have a friend, she started a business that does payroll, on-chain payroll. So for employees who want to get paid in like USDC or USDT, they take care of all the tax withholding, they take care of everything, and instead of sending you money into your bank account, they put it into your crypto wallet. So deposits, payments, loans, savings, right? On-chain financial services are quickly becoming basically indistinguishable from banking services. So I have 2 teenage sons, and I know that when they go to university, they're going to sign up for bank accounts. Or they might, but they might also just end up signing up for some kind of crypto service. And the reality is it's increasingly difficult to tell the difference between an on-chain service, an on-chain app that looks like a bank, and a traditional bank. And one of my favorite examples of this is the MetaMask MasterCard. Right, with MasterCard and Visa operating stablecoin access and stablecoin networks, I was able to set up an Apple Pay linked to my MetaMask wallet in less than 10 minutes. Now, it still is probably more complicated than it should be. I had to take some money that was in ETH and turn it into USDC, and then I had to bridge it to a different L2 network inside of Ethereum. So it's still more complicated than it should be, but we are working through all of those obstacles to the point where it's going to be simple, seamless, and transparent, right? What we are trying to get to is something that just works, and we are not that far away from it. And that's true in the B2C space, but it's also true in the B2B space. Last year, EY became the first company to receive a fully automated business-to-business stablecoin payment on the Ethereum network. And we did this by working with SAP, PayPal, and Coinbase. So PayPal paid an EY invoice. We were doing some work for them. They paid an EY invoice from inside their SAP system. How many of you know what SAP is? I see a few hands going up. So for those of you who don't know, first of all, lucky you. And then secondly, what SAP is it's the biggest enterprise management system on earth. If you're a large company, you use SAP for like everything, right? And so SAP and EY have worked together to create something called Digital Currency Hub that allows companies to basically take payments from traditional banking and make payments directly either from their own wallets or from their institutional payments. So PayPal paid an EY invoice using PYUSD stablecoins. It went to our Coinbase institutional account and showed up in our enterprise systems as cash paid against a PayPal invoice. That's full automation. And it's absolutely transformational. It's as powerful as any kind of business to consumer transaction. And enterprise payments, the same thing is happening, right? I think I forgot I had a whole slide on this, but this is exactly what's happening. Enterprise payments are moving on chain as well, and we are currently talking to companies about building basically enterprise network stablecoins, where a single large enterprise could build a stablecoin for all of their business partners, and they could do things like extend credit to all of their suppliers at their very low credit rates. One of the big problems that exists in large, complex supply chains is if you're a big company at the top of the chain and you've got a really good credit rating, you might have suppliers way down at the bottom that don't have good credit, but they need working capital. And if you have your own stablecoin, you can find ways to extend working capital directly to them. Now, I think what's going on here is it's not just technology. Blockchain technology isn't in and of itself somehow magically, automatically more efficient than traditional banking systems, right? Centralized systems are actually, from a compute standpoint, they're probably more efficient. But what's happening is you just have this tremendous level of competition in the blockchain ecosystem. So, big online payments, right? Credit card networks generate much more fees, right? $1 to $2 on average for a transaction. Ethereum mainnet, you're talking about 40 or 50 cents. But when you get down to some of these Ethereum L2s and some of the other networks out there, you're talking about being able to make transactions consistently, reliably, instantaneously, and for basically no cost at all. Now, it's not fair to say that this is a perfect apples-to-apples comparison. If I pay for something with a credit card, I get frequent flyer miles. There's a form of like insurance, right? It's not exactly the same thing. But basically what we're getting with blockchains is incredibly low cost, very competitive transaction processing with the ability to package in lots of business logic. I would say, in my opinion, blockchains have a significant competitive advantage over traditional payment systems, not just because they're cheaper at the moment and it's very competitive, but also because smart contracts let you do way more sophisticated things on a blockchain network than you can in a traditional payment network. What does this all mean? I think for big enterprises, this will fundamentally change the way they manage their cash and their money, right? Today what happens is basically large companies especially, they keep pools of money all around the world. They have global treasury management, but they keep pools of cash to handle all the ups and downs, and they keep quite a bit. And to give you an interesting data point, there's something like $2.6 trillion of working capital deployed just in US companies, and most of that is as loans. So companies borrow money to hold working capital, right? Now, imagine how you would manage your money if moving money was both basically instantaneous and pretty much free. Instead of keeping lots of these like pools of money all around the world, you would keep very small amounts of money, exactly what you just needed maybe just for today. And you might rebalance your global cash every single day, and you might put your big global cash, either you might return some of it to shareholders, or you might put it into like the highest yield items, but you would literally completely change the way you hold and manage your cash. And I think about this as basically streaming money, right? And it will happen first in big companies because they can think about it strategically and they can build applications to support it, but it's going to go everywhere. Right? If you work today, you get paid today, right? If you use electricity, instead of getting billed once a month, maybe we're going to bill people every night at midnight for their electricity consumption for the day, right? The math actually pencils out. If transaction costs are basically zero, instead of extending 30 days of credit to your customers, extend 0 days. Bill them every night, right? And if your employees want to be paid every single day, do it immediately. Right? And what's really cool about this is it provides almost instant, complete connection between incentive and reward. If you tell somebody, hey, reduce your electricity consumption today, that's not as, I'm like, well, 30 days from now, will I even remember that I saved 25 cents or 50 cents or $1? But you know what? If it's done tonight, save today, get paid today, right? Work today, get paid today, work overtime today, get paid extra immediately, I think it will actually change how people are able to manage their incentives. So I think this streaming model of money, it starts in enterprises with strategic treasury management programs, but it ends up in every single consumer transaction environment. So streaming payments is going to be transformational, cycle time, demand response, working capital, and I think also it will improve business survival rates. I have worked with lots of small businesses. Nothing will kill a small business faster than suppliers who don't pay on time, right? Suppliers who find a reason not to pay you, that they take too long, right? A lack of working capital really kills small businesses. So I think this idea of being able to sort of work today, get paid instantaneously, getting rid of this idea of net 30, I'm going to pay you in 30 days or 60 days, I think in the long run, it is ultimately transformational to all kinds of companies and individuals. Now, to get to payments and make them really valuable, I think it's worthwhile thinking about the entire ecosystem of a business transaction. This is, I think, something that's really missing from the conversation. In the world of crypto, you talk to people and like payments, stable coins, they're super excited. But if you think about a business agreement, it's basically boils down to this. I have money, you have stuff, and we are going to exchange my money for your stuff under the terms of some kind of agreement. The payment, believe it or not, the payment is the easiest, smallest, and cheapest part of this process. Negotiating an agreement, that's expensive. Checking to see that the invoice matched the agreement that we made, that's time-consuming. The payment's actually the cheap and easy part. But the truth is, we can automate all of this on-chain, and we can have a really transformational effect. And there's, if you think about something like a supply chain, right, where you're making stuff and you're moving it from one part of the world to another, managing all of this process is really expensive, and it's probably the most difficult thing that companies do, and we can put this all on chain, right? And I want to give you just one small example of something that is really transformational. EY built the payment, well, not really the payment, the invoicing system between Microsoft and their key video game suppliers for the Xbox video game network. Now, we did this to solve a problem for Microsoft, which is that they had thousands and thousands of contracts with gaming companies, and all of these contracts are different, right? So Microsoft, for the really powerful gaming company, might have a deal like, hey, we're going to sell $1 billion worth of your stuff, and you're going to get 90% of that revenue. But if you're just a very small mom and pop operator, you might get very different terms, or you might have special agreements like the first $100 million is you get 70%, and then after 100 million, you get 90%. That's really difficult for traditional computing systems to manage. Smart contracts handle this beautifully. Any kind of business agreement that's logical and reasonable, you can put into a smart contract. So that's what we did. And by doing that, it was absolutely transformational. We reduced the amount of time it took Microsoft to calculate their monthly invoices from 45 days, which, by the way, longer than a month, to 4 minutes. 45 days to 4 minutes. If you are a consultant, that is like that's a home run, right? You have earned your fees. Secondly, we cut the cost of administering the entire system almost in half. And this was for a very challenging prototype project that we did in smart contracts on a private Ethereum network 6 years ago. This is not something we did last week. This is 6 years ago. And then lastly, we vastly improved the level of trust that existed between Microsoft and their business partners because they could see how all the logic in the business agreement was being executed. That's transformational. That's really, really successful. So if you imagine all of this capability, right, the payment is the smallest part of this. There's so much more value to be created than just the payment, but the payment is a hugely important part of that. Now, some of you might be asking, why isn't everybody doing this? And the answer is it's actually really hard, and particularly it's difficult without privacy. Like even for Microsoft, we had to do this on a private version of Ethereum. But there are no really scalable blockchain networks that are not public blockchain networks. And to make this work, you need two kinds of privacy. Number one, you need privacy for moving the money and the assets around, right? You don't want your competition to know how much you're spending, who you're giving it to, what they're giving you. You don't want to share that information. That's very, very sensitive. And then secondly, you also need to keep the terms of the agreement private as well. And so those are the two big privacy priorities that at EY we have been working to fix so that we can really scale up enterprise payments and business contracts. For privacy environments, we really think that you need four things ultimately. Number one, scalability, right? You got to be able to handle hundreds of millions and ultimately billions of transactions, right? Number two, programmability. It's not enough just to move the payment around. You need to be able to have programmability. If you have terms of the agreement, like I'm going to pay you so much money 30 days later, or you get 75% of this amount, that's programmability, and you need to be able to implement that. You need composability. You need information and assets to be able to move privately from one application or tool to another. And then lastly, you need permanence, right? We are used to thinking about blockchain privacy as these like privacy pools or mixers where somebody puts stuff in and they take it out. But I think the future of on-chain privacy is you put assets into a privacy environment and you leave them there. Because why do you want to disclose even all the other information? Right? So you're just going to put them in there and leave them in there. They're not going to just go in and out. They're going to go in and stay inside of this privacy environment. And I personally foresee the future of on-chain transactions as mostly being private. So we have a lot of the pieces. They're not fully assembled. At EY, we built something called Nightfall. It is an Ethereum Layer 2 blockchain network. It's currently in version 4, and we will have version 4 up available on the Ethereum testnet in probably about 2 months. It's a large-scale privacy network that allows you to do private payments and asset transfers for fungible and non-fungible tokens. We built something called Starlight. Starlight is super exciting. It's another public domain open source application. It allows you to make programmable privacy smart contracts. So you can have complex multi-party business agreements running under full privacy, right? And both of these are coming together so that we can have scalability and full composability and permanent privacy for both enterprise and individual users. And very importantly, all of these are public domain open source. Any organization can use them, and they can run on any EVM-compatible network. Just to give you a sense of how long we've been working on privacy, I like to joke, I don't ever tell my bosses this, but we're 8 years into what I thought was going to be like a 2-year project. Where I really thought when we started in like 2017 that we would be done by like 2019. We had that privacy solved. It was not easy. So we showed a prototype in 2018. And at that time, the prototype, it cost $100 in gas fees to do a transaction, which is crazy. Like, it's completely unsustainable. No one's going to pay $100 for a transaction. Now, 8 years later, we're down to about a penny a transaction on a layer 2 network, and lower than that on, and about 25 to 30 cents on the Ethereum mainnet. So we are getting to the point where privacy transactions are scalable and affordable. So, some of this stuff may seem like it's a bit futuristic, streaming money, privacy-enabled, composable transactions. They're not. They are here, and they are coming, I think, quite quickly in the near future, sooner than you expect, right? And again, if you look at the history of blockchain, it looks a lot like the internet in terms of the ramp-up of users and accounts and adoption. From an EY perspective, I'll just do a brief advertisement. We are the only big system integrator in the world that is committed to public blockchains. We are a public blockchain firm. We don't really focus on or try to build on private networks. I am, in my free time, the chairman of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. I also wrote a nice little book called Ethereum for Business, which I'm told is a safe and effective way to fall asleep at night. That's a joke, self-deprecating humor. But I really have been in this business for quite a while. I helped build IBM's first blockchain with help from Vitalik Buterin back in 2013 and 2014. And if you would like it, I have a Proof of Paul NFT, which you can mint and receive on the Polygon Proof of Stake network. I make a new one each month. And I'll let you grab that if you would like one. And with that, I'm told that I am 1 minute and 19 seconds over my allocated time. So there will be no time for questions. But I will be around, and thank you all so much for listening.